This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch channels with Celinda Wilson for the first time. Welcome to the program. How are you doing tonight?
I'm well. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'll let everybody know we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. So you can see that icon up there. Listen on Newsly. Use coupon code GHOST and receive 1 month free premium subscription so you can stop scrolling and start listening. Again, we are a featured podcast on that platform. So check us out. Later tonight, you'll be able to hear the audio version of this on Newsly. So thank you again for being on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So this is episode 889 of the Family Electric Ghost Cast. And we're happy to be out here for this amount of time. And for this episode, we're going to focus on this topic, how to create the life you want. So maybe you want to talk about, you are a personal development enthusiast and certified holistic health practitioner.
Yes. So yeah, both of those things are true. All of my life, I've enjoyed improving upon myself, making myself better each and every day, any type of way I can. I guess that really started when I was around 18, getting into self-help books and things like that. And then just, as time has gone on, I've just enjoyed it more and decided I wanted to. It's kind of like a progression of realization that I've come to what I'm doing right now. So I didn't always know that I wanted to do this, just kind of sprang into action.
Yeah, self-actualization is really interesting because I'm a producer, podcaster, and and a musician. And a lot of times musicians, we try to like self-actualize to actually make something happen, and we create like this other version of ourselves.
Yeah.
Because the day-to-day version of ourselves isn't the same as what we present on stage. And so we actually become like this other person. And you can see with actors and other people who are like in kind of entertainment, but self-actualization happens, when you're not just a musician. If you find that you've become something else. A lot of people realize that they might be doing a 9 to 5 and they're not satisfied and they want to do something else. So is there that type of thing that you just over time you got closer to what you really wanted to do and what you want to be?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, my mid 30s, I'd say that I was looking at my life schedule being, I was working 9 to 5. I was spending like 2 hours in traffic every day, hauling my kids back and forth. And I was just like, I don't want this for the rest of my life. So I have to do something different. So I started thinking about how I wanted to work half the time and make more money. Right? I didn't know how that was going to come about, but I was like, okay, I want to work half the time. I want to make more money. And then what happened is I landed a job as a professor and I began teaching at a local college. And it came true. I was working half the time, making a lot more money, and starting to create the life that I want further by asking further things like having a nice, easy drive to work, which was great. A nice, easy 20 minutes with no lights. And, just being able to get up and go walk my dogs in the morning or have more flexibility and freedom in my schedule. So just start creating those things. And to share how I started doing that is just, it's really about knowing what you want. Once you know what you want, it's easier to attain those things. So knowing that I want to have a certain life where I'm able to have more flexibility, I have to think about, well, what things do I really, what does it take to get that? And start thinking about those steps and then actually taking action on it. And that's basically what I do. I think that's the basis of manifestation, because you have to know what you want. You have to have the desire for it, and then take the action, figure out the steps and take action on the steps in order to, realize it to come to you. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, I think I totally get it because like I'm an IT person. For many years I was a road warrior, and it was kind of the measure in our industry that we travel to the client site. We kind of do whatever is necessary. We work 60 hours, 100 hours a week. We just kind of burn ourselves out, and people think of like you get judged by how much time you're willing to be that road warrior. And over time I said, well, I don't need to do that. I can still do what I'm doing, and I can do it remotely, and I can enjoy my home. And so for the last 5 years I've been remote, and I've
Yes.
been able to actually make more money, less time at the airport, less time stuck in traffic, being able to garden, exercise, take care of my health, take care of my family. And a lot of people felt like, well, this is like it's all or nothing. You're that road warrior and you have to do that to get recognized, or could you actually do something else? And it's a lot of times we put the ceiling on ourselves. We think that there's no other possibility, right? But
Right.
I think a lot of times you have to have the imagination, or to kind of like look in the mirror and say, what do I really want? And not be scared. I think fear is probably the biggest thing that stops people, right? Like if you have that
Absolutely.
fear of something different, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. I totally agree with all of that. Yeah, definitely fear is the biggest thing. I mean, even in even in this part of my journey where I, quit my job as teaching and then decided to go and be an entrepreneur, that dive without having a whole bunch of supportive backing behind me and just, relying on and believing in myself and stuff like that, and having to remind myself that I am capable. I know that I'm able to do whatever I set my mind to, and just pushing myself to do that. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of fighting back those imposter thoughts and things like that, and just remembering to stay focused on building and moving forward. So I totally, that fear can get you if you don't, if you're not careful.
Yeah, well, fear is
Yeah.
the big thing. I mean, as an artist, a lot of times as an artist, we get scared of our own material. If you talk to a lot of people, from novelists to painters to poets to musicians, they have this big catalog of stuff, right?
Mhm.
That they're scared to show people, or they think isn't good. And the problem what I've learned over time as an artist, starting from being age like 17 and I'm 55,
Mhm.
is aren't always the best judge of your catalog of work. And if you hold on to things and never show anybody, you limit possibilities. And a lot of artists actually are self-limiting because they
Yeah.
don't show people they have 1,000 songs, they show people two of them, right?
Yeah.
And like, how do you know that those other 998 wouldn't make it if you don't dare to show anybody?
Right, right. You definitely have to know you're worthy. I think it's just not, it's almost like low a low self-esteem, or a chronic low self-esteem that sometimes we're not aware that we have, right? You're not aware that you're really holding yourself back. Um, and that can happen. And once you realize it though, I think that you can still become anxious and afraid, but if you have some
Mhm.
type of, you know, inspiration or someone pushing you or some type of support, you definitely can start taking those steps moving forward. I think something that I use too is just anytime that I feel like I'm not balanced, or I get a little nervous about entering into something new, I remind myself of all the things that I've come through, and then I've worked through, and it's just come out just fine. Because why? I put one foot in front of the other. As long as I keep doing that and staying focused, it turns out. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of times it's like a lot of people's thinking, like a lot of people kind of go with the crowd. And
Hmm.
if you're a creator or somebody who's an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
you have to have the courage to have kind of that audacity. And people was like, well, why do you think you deserve to be able to do it? It's really like every musician, if you ever look at them, they have to have a certain level of arrogance to a certain degree to be able to get on stage to believe they should be there, right?
Okay.
And some
Okay.
people look at that, well, you'll get a lot of haters. They say, well, how can you do that, right? How can
Mhm.
you do that? Because most people don't want to do that. It's outside their comfort zone. And
Mhm.
I find that, like, with people who are like creators or entrepreneurs or CEO, how did they get there? Because they didn't do all those self-limiting things. They started to think a little bit out the box,
Yeah.
and it's probably hard. So maybe like how is your thinking different from society? Because what I find is the people who really push it aren't doing what like the everyday normal 9 to 5 person that's comfortable being in the same thing for 20 years. That's not what they do.
Yeah. I think my thinking is different in a lot of different ways. Say, for example, just in what you were just speaking about, the way that I look at certain things, like you said that musicians have to have a certain level of arrogance to a degree, but I don't. I look at it as, is it arrogance that you need to have, or is it confidence? It really should be confidence, because arrogance is, in a sense, is more of a, kind of a, has a little bit of a negativity to it that is, can bring negativity,
Yeah.
versus confidence is more of knowing you and knowing your self-worth. So I think it really always just points to that. Do you have the confidence? Do you believe in your skills and abilities to go out and make the music or do whatever it is? You don't really want arrogance. Arrogance means that there's some form of ignorance there. So that's how I look at it. I just
Well,
think
yeah.
of things a little bit different. Yeah.
Well, I think what
Yeah.
happens is like that your critics might call you arrogant, but it's the confidence. Because
Yeah.
like when you're able to strut on stage like a Mick Jagger or a David Bowie or a Tina Turner, people look at it like, well, how do you do that? And people, some of the critics would like, well, they kind of have this like air about them, right? So
Hmm.
your critics and the haters will say that, but it's
Hmm.
really the self confidence. And
Absolutely.
and a lot of people, if you actually find the truth about a lot of people you see in that position,
Hmm.
they actually are very shy. A lot of times before they get to the stage self version of themselves, they're
Yeah.
almost like it's like there is a certain level of kind of hyper reality, is like a hyper version of yourself that you put in
Absolutely.
like your stage version. Like even when you're a public speaker, there's kind of like you're an actor. It's like you have to learn some theatrical capabilities. And when
Yeah.
you do that, you're kind of this other version of you, like the other you. There's this
Hmm.
idea in poetry. And
Yeah.
I think when people start to realize that the potential of the other you, which is
Hmm.
actually still you, you're
Yeah.
just accessing a different part of you. So maybe you can, do you think in the same kind of terms, or maybe you have different ways of looking at it?
So that's almost like alter ego, and I think that, um, yeah. I mean, I'm not always in the same mode, right? So, I mean, I have a goofy side. We all have these different ways and or different, personalities and things at times, different ways that we behave. I don't behave the same way when I go to, hanging out with my girlfriends. I'm not Professor Celinda. I'm, Celinda, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, and I think too, that yes, you're mentioning about haters and things like that. I think that when you have an understanding of who you are, uh, the weight of other people's opinions don't really matter. And it doesn't really matter at all.
Hmm.
What other people's opinions really tell you is more about them, how what you're doing affects them, but it's about them. It's not about you. And as long as you're confident in what you're doing, it doesn't matter. Go out and shine and be bright and beautiful and bold, and not worry about what people have to say. Because I mean, you can use it as a litmus test if it's going to help inspire you and encourage you to grow further or something like that. But if it's something that holds you down, makes you feel bad, you feel something like that, that's not the type of energy you want, and that's not something you want to be taken in. So, yeah, the weight of other people's opinions, it's you know, it doesn't matter to me. It
Well, it's
doesn't matter.
hard,
It shouldn't matter.
right? It shouldn't matter, but it seems like there's a lot of peer pressure to fit in to society. Like there's an idea, like I was a sociology major, and there's
Hmm.
this idea of being anomy, which if you're like disconnected from society, most people don't want to be disconnected, so they're willing to accept certain norms and
Hmm.
mores, and so those tend to make you kind of get along, to
Hmm.
go along, to get into templates.
Hmm.
And the people who become kind of like the alphas, or the people who become executives or become leadership roles, are willing to push beyond what is the normal kind of acceptable practice to kind of challenge things.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to actually sit there and raise your hand, like, and actually speak, because then people are going to judge what you say. Some people are so concerned about what the effects of what they said are that they
Hmm.
don't actually speak. They
Yeah.
like other people speak for them.
Yeah. I agree. I used to be one of those people. I had bad social anxiety where I wouldn't be on this podcast today. I remember one of the worst times I was standing up in front of a history class and I was supposed to be reading a paper. And as soon as I opened my mouth, it sounded like I was underwater. Like literally each word just
Hmm.
sounded, gurgly. And that's how, after that, I was just like, I don't ever want to speak in front of anybody. I don't want anybody to mention anything good that I do. I'm going to cut it off. I was concerned about what people thought about me. I was worried about, I wanted people to like me, but I felt very awkward with connecting with people because I grew up in a more kind of shy, and solitary kind of life.
Hmm.
And I always wanted to fit in, but I couldn't fit in. I tried real hard. It just didn't work out. It was very awkward. I couldn't make it work. And that's when I just realized that obviously that was not what was supposed to happen. And
Hmm.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Um, but yeah, I definitely know about what you're talking about in terms of trying to fit in and being concerned about what people are saying, or, whether they think you're good. Are you a good musician or
Yeah.
are you not?
Yeah, I think it's like the childhood trauma because, like, when I was a young kid, I
Mm-hmm.
was told to, I guess, give a speech. I don't know, it was like in sixth grade or something. I had to do something in front of an assembly,
Mm-hmm.
and I was shaking, and I couldn't do it. I just
Mm-hmm.
and as a musician, I was always in the back. I was
Mm-hmm.
always like playing clarinet or sax or playing keyboards. Never was like really out front.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually there was like this thing that happened with me, like I think it's kind of crucible, is at age 27 I had cancer. I had a level 3 sarcoma,
Oh.
and I beat it. And
Oh.
after that, I said, well, why should I be scared anymore?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do things that I because I felt like I got a second chance.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, I'm gonna try to actually I'm gonna sing, even though I never sang before. I'm gonna be the lead in this band. I'm gonna go do a podcast. I'm gonna be a host. I'm gonna do these things. And I started to just not be scared because I said,
Mm-hmm.
once you have a crucible moment,
Mm-hmm.
then it kind of gets you're not scared anymore.
Yeah.
And because you like I beat something. So so do you have some kind of I mentioned in your questions you like to answer how you were able to heal from childhood trauma? Is that part of your progression?
Yeah. So in terms of healing from my childhood, things that I did for that was basically kind of like go back, like visualization, kind of like go back and meet me at that age of the traumas that I experienced. Something that just took a process, but I did it. And I basically went back and provided comfort to that part of me that felt like it needed it. And yeah, and then, you know, what happens after that is just basically those feelings are still there, but they're not anything that like holds you back or anything like that. And I think in terms of progressing to now, I kind of sorry, I kind of lost where I was going with this, but um, childhood traumas and healing them definitely is something that had to take place. And I'm sorry, I forgot the rest. I'm so sorry, I forgot the rest of the question.
No, that's fine. I mean, I think it's just a matter like the childhood trauma. I think people have to kind of deal with it head on, and then they discover because what I find after talking to a lot of therapists and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
analysts and people who are like life coaches, they've mentioned that kind of facing that inner child
Mm-hmm.
was like a lot of how they actually solve problems that with like the kind of glass ceilings that people put on themselves is a lot
Yeah,
of it is because they didn't heal that inner child or they didn't
yeah.
they didn't have that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a lot of the childhood trauma that I solved, I can't really say that there were things that were I can't really tell which things were holding me back in terms of the things I went back and helped, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I can't really explain it, but
Yeah, yeah.
um oh, my computer just shut off. Sorry. Um and then that just took my attention, but what was I gonna say about that?
It's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm so
I
sorry.
think it's
I'm gonna
just
get better
it's a
at these. I'm
no.
gonna
I
get
think
better
it's
at
just
this.
it's a progress thing because like when I first did my first podcast, I was not where I am like today. Right
Yeah.
after doing like over 800 episodes, you kind of get a certain groove.
Yeah.
And when a lot of podcasters will stop after 12 episodes, that's like the number. The most
Okay.
podcasters actually stop after 12 if they don't hit the goal. And I think they're giving themselves like that's like not enough time to kind of open it up. Because I've been out here since 2016
Okay.
and I kind of tried things and did things, and like you have to kind of warm up. And it's
Yeah.
like even as a musician, it took me 20 years to actually get to the front, and
Hmm.
that was my own progression. And people say, "Well,
Okay.
why didn't you do that 20 years ago?" Everybody has their own journey.
Absolutely.
You're gonna hit where you need to be when you're ready to hit it. You
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. And the turning point, that's the part I was trying to get to here.
yeah, yeah,
You know, turning point, I mean, I think there are a lot of turning points. There's not just one, there are a lot of turning points that I came across. I mean, just the realization that I didn't know who I was. I didn't realize that I didn't know who I was. I didn't even realize that. I didn't learn how to even love myself until I was like in my mid 30s. I didn't really grasp what it was. I mean, I've heard people say, "Oh yeah, you need to love yourself," but what did that really feel like? Now I actually know, and knowing that, it's like I won't put myself in any situations that are, you know not beneficial to me or beneficial for everyone. And turning points, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of them. So to say one, I can't really pinpoint one, but yeah.
what I find over time is like people self sabotage. People don't know who they are, or they follow something that they aspire to be, but they never speak it. Like the thing what I learned over time is like if you never verbalize what you want, then it actually doesn't become real. And a lot of people are like, well, you keep it in. Like, so as a musician, part of what we do is like because we take what's inside and we
Mm-hmm.
bring it out, so
Mm-hmm.
we make it happen. And we actually do a lot of things that are very personal
Yeah.
and very, and when you put that out, what we find is cathartic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but a lot of people, they don't know how to do that because they're never shown as a kid the tools to do that. A lot of people say, well, kind of keep yourself in check, and based
Mm-hmm.
on whatever your parents or grandparents told you, you kind of repress yourself. But when you're a
Absolutely.
music or an artist, any kind of artist or a creative, you tend to access those things and kind of bare your soul. And it's very cathartic, but it's kind of hard because then everybody gets to see it, and then you get responses, and you have to learn how to handle. You can take it personal
Yeah.
if somebody doesn't like what you just did because it actually is personal because it's from you.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I think that's kind of hard to get to a point where you can feel free
Mm-hmm.
to do that. It takes time to actually do that.
Absolutely. You are right. I can remember actually saying, when I was younger, maybe like 5 or 6, saying, I never want to be a star. I never want to be a star because stars have the spotlight on them. People, I didn't want people to be judging me, or I didn't want to let anybody down. So I never wanted to be in the spotlight. And you're so right about that. And words are really powerful too, because, if whatever you speak to yourself or speak out loud, it is forever out there. You can't take back what you say.
Hmm.
And if you are speaking words that are self-limiting, that's what you're going to get. That's going to be what becomes your life. But using things like affirmations, for example, or even using things that are symbolic, like an amethyst or something like that, those things can kind of like train your brain to think more positively. I think a lot of people think of these tools like crystals or things like that as foo-foo, type of
Uh,
things, but it's
yeah,
really about just getting your mind to think differently and more positively so you can move forward and focus on the things that you want to focus on. It's not about like, you don't have to believe in the mystical this or anything
yeah,
like
yeah,
that. But yeah, it's just a tool. They're tools. And if you know how to use them, they're going to help you.
yeah. Because I'm a Buddhist, and we kind of chant, and we
Hmm.
chant our affirmations in terms of we try to speak out
Hmm.
what we feel is the positive. Like a lot what we believe. I'm a Nichiren Daishonin Buddhist, and we kind of believe in the law of cause and effect.
Hmm.
and like negative and positive energy. And so
Yeah.
what we feel is like if you do something positive, then positivity comes back to you. If you do
Hmm.
something negative, negativity comes back to you.
Hmm.
So the actions you take have consequences.
Yeah.
And so it's like so if you put out positive vibrations, the frequencies in the world, then those things will come back to you in a positive way. If you put out negative vibrations, then negative incidents seem to happen.
Yeah.
And some people don't realize the frequencies they're putting out because they're not kind of in touch. And it
Hmm.
might be, oh, it's foo-foo. But
Hmm.
like, yeah, there's such a thing as having a, you've been around people that had negative vibes. They don't even say one word
I'm
and you
saying.
can feel it. So it's a real thing. It's not foo-foo. It's a real. You can feel it.
It is. It really is. Definitely, I agree. That's why also I try to be intentional about who's in my environment and who's in my circle on a regular basis because I feel like I have to be careful of my energy. I pick up other people's energy easily, and I sometimes can be drained by it. So I just want to make sure that what's in my environment is positive and uplifting so that I can focus on what I need to do. And, you know, yeah, it's important to fill yourself with positive stuff as much as possible because there's enough negativity. You want to just be find that balance as much as possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like so. How have you achieved peace of mind? And I do meditation. I like to do my creativity as like cathartic exercise. What are the things you do to achieve peace of mind?
Mm-hmm. Well, my peace of mind started with meditation. It's what opened up my whole spirituality, my just the whole realization to everything came through meditation and awareness and just finding time for self. And the other things that bring me peace of mind is again, it's just using a lot of the tools that I've mentioned, like affirmation, even journaling. I don't really journal, but I know there are really great benefits in that. I do vision boards, I do things like that, anything that I feel like is going to help keep me in that state of peace of mind. I feel like, and the other thing that really I think of is just looking back and reflecting back on all the things that I've come through, I am becoming and where I was, and knowing that each step of the way I've been supported. I've had everything that I needed provided to me, um, by the universe and my intentions and my efforts, and that's how I think.
Well, I think it's like why I've learned it even in my business. I do software design, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we do is this lesson learned. And I
Mm-hmm.
think like, oh well, the lessons learned that we do actually apply to like your regular life too. And
Mm-hmm.
I try to look at that when you if you're an artist and you do something right and it has a good response or it doesn't have a good response, you kind of look at it as well, what's the lesson from this? Like
Mm-hmm.
what could I do to actually get better connections? Like
Yeah.
what could I do to get better reception?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing when you do your job or how you behave with people. So you
Yeah.
have relationships and some things don't go well. Was like, why did they not go well? You start to, have that kind of lesson learned. You review and you figure out. You don't obsess about it, but you try to figure out like what could I do to make this work better. And I think it's like that when you have these kind of self assessments or assessments of the general what's going on around you,
Mm-hmm.
like kind of situational awareness of what you do and understanding that what you do has impacts.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people say, "Oh, I can't impact anything." It's like, well, that's not necessarily true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're 100% right on it. The reflection, self-reflection, especially, that helps every day. It helps if you do it every day. Anytime that you're interacting with anyone, any work that I do, anything like that, it's like every day because it's going to make you better, you know. So, yeah, I agree.
Because a lot of people got to realize, like the best thing I like working with people that realize what they don't know. Because when I run
Hmm.
into somebody and they ask like, "Well, like, I know like everything," I'm like, "Really?" Because it's like nobody knows everything, and
Right.
especially like in IT, new stuff comes along every day. You can't know everything. We
Right.
do 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 because we don't know everything.
Right.
We have to constantly improve our stuff. And one of the cool things I think about like software, it kind of applies to everybody's like your 1.1 version of yourself, 1.2, but you're always progressing. You always realize that you're not perfect, that we have to fix it. And every day we fix it because we know there's something we didn't address, some
Abs-
situation we didn't foresee, and we have to address it.
Yep. Self improvement, improve every day, every day. And it should feel good. It should feel better because, like I said, like you said, you're learning about yourself each time. I mean, we change every single day. So if you're not growing, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah, and I think it goes to the idea like, does spirituality mean you're perfect? It's like I think everybody knows when you're a spiritual person, you kind of accept your imperfection
Oh,
and you
yeah.
realize that you're constantly growing until you're not here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's you don't ever get to a point where you stop finding out new things. In my
Right.
opinion, it's like people are like, oh, I learned everything I need to learn. Really? I don't think so.
Nah, not yet. No, you're right. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. It's a success. Life is a whole process. It's a process, and I'm enjoying my process very much so. The ins, outs, ups, down, whatever. They're just I'm happy.
Well, I think some people get
Yeah.
anxious when they don't have the answer, right? So some people
Mm-hmm.
try to get answers to things that are not answerable to
Right.
get themselves comfort, and then they get thrown down rabbit holes or they go down the wrong way
Right.
because they just can't accept the random aspects of life.
Yeah.
Like sometimes things are not predictable.
Right.
And it's kind of like what I always try to point out the difference between like a classical musician who's reading sheet music
Mm-hmm.
and reading Beethoven, they know exactly what they're going to do. Versus like a free form jazz artist that's in a group and you have to have situational awareness and it's not on the page and you're actually responding to what's happening in real time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that to me, I love playing in that environment versus the written. Now I can read music, but I
Mm-hmm.
find it more enjoyable to be in the free form group where I read the whole band and we're kind of playing off each other and
Yeah.
we don't know where we're going to go.
Yeah.
And that feels to me, some people get scared of that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I can't do that. I don't know what I would do. But
Yeah.
I just love the idea. I don't know what I'm going to do
Yeah.
because that feels good to me. But some
Yeah.
people they're totally scared of that.
I I definitely can agree with that, especially in the artistic sense too. I mean, it's like dancing for me. I see people do all this choreography stuff, and am not good at like following these little the steps and things. But get some music on and let me dance
Hmm.
intuitively. That's my thing. I can just go with the
Yeah,
music, go with the flow, and it's
freeform.
just easier. Yeah, you know. Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of like heart soul thing. You like you
Mm-hmm.
get the thing with art when it becomes too logical,
Yeah.
then you lose kind of the power of some creativity is the fact that you can trust yourself
Mm-hmm.
and you trust your artistic instincts and your creative instincts and you just almost going to go with the flow
Right.
versus I need to know exactly where I'm going to go.
Right.
And
Right.
it's just like your logic brain versus your kind of creative brain. The
Yeah,
creative brain's
absolutely.
willing to deal with like imperfection or randomness or really not knowing where you're going. You just go with the heart soul kind of
Hmm.
aspect of it
Hmm.
versus like, oh, I need to know what key I'm in. I need to know the next transition. I need to know that. And people like look at life like that. I gotta know every
Yeah.
little step or I don't feel secure.
Right. I just came to the realization, like, well, not recently came to it, but there are going to be things and there are going to be things that you don't know, because that's the law of nature. I mean, there's an extreme for everything. So there are going to be things that we as humans will know, and there are going to be things that we just are not going to know. And can you be comfortable with that? I am comfortable with that, right? I don't have to keep searching. I'm not searching for answers for things that are beyond the scope. I'm comfortable in knowing that I'm in this environment and I have all the capabilities and this wonderful opportunities to grow in different ways and evolve and share that with people. I think that's like amazing in itself. So um, yeah, I just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah. So
But
maybe we can talk about like if we people look at are watching this, we have a link up for your website, which is www.celindawilson.com.
yeah.
And maybe you can talk about your business and the services you provide there. If people go to that link, what do you provide there?
Yeah, so if you go to that link, I offer a variety of things. The first, most important thing is just to have a quick, when I say quick, but just a 30-minute consultation so I can tell you about what I can offer to you based on how you need me to assist you. So, how can I help you? And see for a good match in that way if I'm able to assist you. And then the other things that I can offer are health and wellness assessments. I am a certified holistic health practitioner. So, if you need weight loss or any type of nutritional services, I can assist with that. Clarity coaching. Do you need to figure out what your goals are and to create a plan? I can help you with that. If you're looking to, consider what your purpose in life is and create a plan to move towards that, I can help with that as well. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what I do. And I do have a business consulting background. So if you need assistance in that way, I can help. So kind of like a wraparound service for you.
So it's like a holistic point of view because a lot of things, with a holistic point of view from, like the way I look at it is like it's mind, body, spirit, like health. Like you're looking at everything. And some people
Everything.
might just look at one part, like, oh, I'm just look at the spirit or I'm gonna look at your body. But the
Absolutely.
problem is the holistic approach, everything in life is like you have to kind of take it as a holistic piece
Hmm.
because like things usually are more complex. Well, the more complicated or more complex, there's lots of inputs and outputs and everything,
Oh, yeah.
right? And if you just handle one piece, then the other piece doesn't get addressed, and so everybody is so much more than the than what you could take a tiny piece of something and work on it, but you eventually have to look at the whole big picture, right?
Absolutely. And it's all about just, being a ripple in the water, or planting a seed. Because again, what every person goes through is going to be a process for them. So I may not be able to get that person from here to the very end of their journey, but I
Mm.
definitely can get them started and so they understand what things to recognize, how to go ahead and rectify the situation, what tools to use to move them in a more forward fashion. And when you've talked to somebody who's gone through a lot of things like that, it makes it a lot easier instead of trying to struggle and figure it out. You don't have to struggle. You can just reach out.
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of people need to have that conversation
Yeah.
because a lot of times it's like, why are there life coaches and mentors? Because you can't always do it yourself. Like as a musician, like you can learn so much, but then you have to have like a music teacher or
Yeah.
a mentor
Yeah.
or somebody you aspire to be or other musicians. You learn from being with them,
Right.
from the interchange. And so when you have that kind of willing to open up,
Hmm.
I think that's where you're only going to solve something if you speak to it. If you're in a relationship and you
Yeah.
never say what you don't like, well, how's your partner ever going to know?
Right.
You never tell them. They're supposed to automatically. They're their soulmate. They should just automatically know. They should just automatically know. And people make the mistake. It's like, well, he's not here. And like, did you ever say it? You know,
Like,
did you ever
oh, wait a
really
minute.
did you ever really tell them what you wanted?
Right.
Or did you assume that they just knew?
Right. That happens so much. Oh man. But yeah, that's why there's life coaches out there to kind of, sometimes people get, I don't know, I want to say stuck, but they're kind of like they're in their world right now. So maybe it takes a little inspiration or just another perspective to kind of put a little light in there or drop a little seed in there for them to go, oh, okay. And that's what we want. We want people to, you know, see differently so that they can live differently, live better, you know? because there's
Yeah, I
better
think
ways.
everybody has. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get to the point where you get comfortable because, like again, my journey, like I was not a person that would be
Hmm.
doing this podcast. If you looked at the 17-year-old version of myself, I could not communicate at all.
Hmm.
Right, I was very bad at it, and now today I've been able to do things that the younger version of myself was like, wow, I was so scared of everything,
Yeah.
and it's really how it's interesting how you can evolve
Yeah.
as a person, and actually look back at the younger version of yourself and say, wow,
Hmm.
and it's like it's a process, but you have to actually deal with it head on. And a lot of people, that's the hardest first step, is to actually acknowledge that you need to actually have a mentor, or
Right.
acknowledge you need a life coach, or you need somebody to do some holistic talk, conversation with because some people, if they're not ready, how are they going to ever get there? So
Right.
how do you get somebody to be ready? Maybe you can't. They have to
You
be already
don't. You don't. They have to be ready. Yeah. And when they are, there'll be life coaches around. But until then, live and let live. And when it's time, they will.
No, there was something that was interesting. One of the questions one of the things you had here was like, has any advice you've given ever backfired or been wrong? So that was something that you had as a question you're ready to answer. So
Yeah. um, no, not that I can think of that's backfired or gone wrong. Not at least not yet. But I mean, hopefully not
that's cool.
ever.
That
But
that's cool. Well, I would say being a dad with a 22-year-old daughter, I'd
Mhm.
probably say there's a bunch of things I've told her that she's like, "Well, Dad, you're totally wrong."
uh,
And I was like, "I guess so." Like
yeah.
I had
Okay.
to.
Yeah, maybe in regards to some teenagey things, just not knowing some of the teenagey things I might have. but, but in terms of like actually giving like real advice to other people outside of my home, no, I haven't come across that yet.
Yeah, I think as a guy in America, problem is like we've been trained to do things, and I'm the only male in my house. I have a cat, my daughter, my wife, and I get told all the time, like, guess what? You're wrong, Dad.
Dang.
Like, okay, I'm sorry. It's like, because I guess well, it's not guess, but it's like, I was I was taught by people from a time period of like the 1940s,
Hmm.
right? So the 1940s had very set ideas
Okay.
about way people should be and behave, and so those things were kind of even unconsciously embedded in my head, and over time I've had to learn the way things are. And I think the problem is that people get like stuck in their comfort
Hmm.
zone of, oh, my grandpa taught me this and my mom taught me that, my uncle said that, and all these people in my church said this. And so then they get stuck in a paradigm, and but the world is evolving outside of that, and they're like, well, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Hmm.
And then with having a 22-year-old daughter, there's a whole different things going on in her generation that like, oh wow, that
Hmm.
the grandparents are like, what? but but like I had to like evolve faster than they can.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. My son, he's 22. He's 20 as well. And definitely that generation is actually I see a lot of positive things happening with that generation right now. But there's a lot of things to catch up on my end. I kind of feel like it was when my grandmother would be like looking at our music and being like, "Oh my goodness, you're listening to that," or "You're, oh my goodness, you're doing this." you know,
Yeah,
I kind of feel like just a little. It's just a little bit different. I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking like I
yeah,
feel like I'm in older, definitely
yeah. Role
older.
reversal.
Oh
Yeah,
man. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like my mom was 17-year-old and like, hey, dad, mom and dad, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna go to the club. I'm gonna hang out with these people and listen to
Yeah.
my music. And like my father like was telling like my father telling my grandpa about James Brown. And my grandpa's like, well, that's too much. And my dad saying, no, it's not enough.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's like every generation is gonna have somebody kind of pushing the envelope, and the kids are like into this, and the parents are like, what?
Right.
But it's like, okay, that's what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, but there's other things going on where the acceptance of like just human beings just
Yeah.
accepting each other, and
Yeah.
we were kind of told certain things, and the
Mhm.
world's changing,
Yeah.
and we've got all these people all over the planet
Yeah.
that yeah, and it's not just us.
Right.
So there's so many different cultures and religions and all things, and so you have to be a little bit more open minded
Yeah.
because like your kids might bring home people that you never have had to deal with before, and then
Absolutely.
suddenly how are you going to handle that if you're going to stay like in a rigid paradigm?
Right.
You know,
I
you
think I
might yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think that if people just, there's so much beauty in diversity and the different minds and perspectives. I know that, everybody comes from different backgrounds and so they have different perspectives, but if people just really think about the common things that we all want, which is to feel love, to have, stability, security, we have all the same type of things that we want in life, and definitely we can, build community and connection and communication with one another if we are willing to change our perspectives. So it's another project that I'm working on right now to kind of help businesses with their like workplace culture, because I think it's something that definitely could use some improvement. Um,
I don't like being like a lot of times in the world I'm in IT and software. I go in a room and I'm like the only guy that looks like me, right?
Mm,
For 20 years, it's been
mm,
like that most of the time.
mm.
Maybe there's one other person.
Okay.
And the other thing also is like my daughter's into disability advocacy because
Okay.
she has a disability, and she's an artist, and she's been going around. Well, she's been doing a lot of projects. She's actually in a residency involved with being an art director, supporting arts for people with disabilities,
Nice.
and letting people know that they should open up,
Mhm.
arts and
Nice.
make it more welcoming to people with disabilities,
Mhm.
because there's tons of artists with disabilities, but sometimes the art uh, areas or the art world sometimes has not been quick to adjust to that reality that you should be welcoming to every type of artist. And so it's the same kind of thing. The diversity, like
Mhm.
there's the acceptance of people's, that have problems, but doesn't mean they can't be a great artist, and you're not welcoming them into the community, and just being more humanistic
Yeah.
to realize that giving access to people that's ADA compliant,
Yeah.
that's equal opportunity compliant, it gives you more voices. If more voices are in the room, then you
Mhm.
might be able to get to markets that you didn't think you could.
Right.
So it actually can be good for business. You can make profit. It's not always going to take away from profit.
Yeah.
So, that's I think a learning curve for some of the business people out there is they, oh, it's going to cost us money. It's like, well, you can get to new markets.
It's just
Don't
like
always think about the cost.
I always wonder, like, why do people not want to just do the right thing or do what feels right in your being? Like, maybe that feels right to people, but for me, that doesn't seem like it would feel right. You know, and what happened to being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes? I think that's a really wonderful lesson to show you empathy for other people and compassion for other people, to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes in that moment or in whatever situation. How would you feel if it were you? Can give you a better idea of how to, connect with people, because if you rely on all of your past paradigms and rely on all those type of things, you really might block or miss out on some wonderful connections, some opportunities to learn and grow in different ways. And yeah, that's I want to be able to change
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. I think what happens is some people get into camps and then they say, oh, that's a special interest group. And I said,
Mhm.
well, all human beings are, yeah, we're human beings. So is somebody with a disability a special interest group? Is somebody with a different religion a special interest group? They're a human being.
Right.
Maybe they're not in the majority, but that doesn't make them some special interest that you don't have to pay attention to because now you labeled them,
It's a
and
lot of
the problem we
labels.
have is we have a lot of people who go, well, yeah, that's a special interest group. So what does that mean? So that means you don't have to accommodate, you don't have to listen, you don't have to hear them, because now you put them in a box and say, well, that's somebody I don't need to pay attention to. That's what
Hmm.
I see going on where people will say, oh, I can put them in that box. And that means that they're not legitimate. And I think that's what I think we make a lot of mistakes in society is people go try to say, oh, I can put them I can tick them on this box. And that means I don't have to deal with them, or I can delegitimize them, or I can not have to, address their concerns because, oh, they're not in my group. So I think that's where people have to kind of open up.
Definitely will help with a lot. It will raise the vibrations of this society just to
Yeah.
open your mind just a little. Yeah. Yep.
And it's hard to do that because some people come from comfort zones.
Yeah.
And the same thing that stops you from getting to the place you need to be and from a microcosm level. Because one
Hmm.
thing I learned like in sociology, you have like microcosm, you have macrocosm.
Yeah.
Some of the things from the microcosm affect the macrocosm.
Hmm.
From a societal perspective, you have societal impacts and you have
Hmm.
micro individual impacts.
Hmm.
Eventually, a bunch of micro and individual impacts affects the whole society, and the
Absolutely.
macrocosm affects the individual. So it's kind of like you can't have it's not all or one. It's all intertwined.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
this is where like the holistic thinking comes
Hmm.
in, where if you have a holistic thinking, like you're saying in terms of therapy, but like the whole society, you have to think in terms of all the impacts.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to compartmentalize. They want to put it here and put it there, and like, well, that's not how the environment is.
It's not. It's really not. I mean, go walk out in nature. It's not really like that. Everything's
That's
kind of all over everywhere. So,
yeah,
you
it's
know,
gonna happen. And you put out it's like you put something in the river, it gets in the river, it gets in the water, it gets in the ocean, it gets in the air. Then
yeah,
you can't just say, well, it's just there. Like, no,
no.
it
It's
went
like
everywhere.
yeah. Um, I mean, and I know it's a possible thing. I think people feel like some of the changes, are we able to get people to work together and things like that? And you definitely can. I mean, I've been able to put together individuals coming into a classroom from different backgrounds, different ages, to come together and learn how to connect and communicate, find partnership, like really
That's
encourage each
awesome.
other. Yeah, yeah. And so I know it's a doable thing. And like I said, very diverse groups, you can do it. You just have to want to, you know, put out that positive energy and treat people how you really would want to be treated. Just always think of that too, you
Well,
know?
you're a personal development enthusiast, and you're
Hmm.
very enthusiastic about that. I can see.
Yeah.
And, I think that's a positive thing. Like I
Hmm.
said, I believe in positivity. I believe in, good effects.
Yeah.
If you put the best foot forward every day, you take that step forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way I look at it, being a cancer survivor, every day wake up and I can get up and do something that I go, that's a win.
For real.
Right, that's a win for me. So, but that if people start thinking about like, maybe say, whoa, that's obvious. It's like, but it's
Mm,
not so obvious to everybody.
right.
It's like some people, you have to actually get them to think that way because some
Yeah.
people get into depression and they don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Every day they wake up and it's not a win,
Yeah.
And so that's if you can help people develop themselves where they can get that kind of enthusiasm
Absolutely.
for just waking up.
Yeah. Seriously.
I think
Seriously.
it's a positive thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Definitely. So, you know, reach out to me, if you want to. I'm happy to help anyone that has questions or needs
Yeah.
advice.
Well, I think it's great to talk to people. That's why we do the podcast is to
Hmm.
get people to understand the different points of view that people have. And I encourage people to go to your website, www.celindawilson.com. And thank you for being a guest. We do have another podcast tonight, but we did have a really enjoyable conversation. This podcast will be everywhere. Podcast can be listened to, from iHeartRadio to Spotify to Apple to Amazon to Google Play by tomorrow. But tonight it is on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and it will be there permanently on those platforms. And we'll send a landing page for all your listeners and watchers so they can watch however or listen however they want to. So again,
Wonderful.
thank you for being on the Bam Electric Ghost podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.